The story begins with Suhyun, a very reserved girl who is especially focused on her studies because she has a very clear goal: to get into a good university to improve her life and help her family. Because of her distant attitude, her classmates often make fun of her. However, Suhyun prefers to use the striped umbrella rather than get wet. On her way out, she sees a happy couple, and while listening to music, she reflects on her desire to experience first love. When she gets home, she finds her younger brother playing video games. She barely pays attention to him, gives a few instructions before bed, but the next day discovers her younger brother didn't sleep at all. Annoyed, she drags him out by the hair, and in the middle of the commotion, their father wakes up. But when he sees his children fighting, he decides to act as if nothing is happening. But before continuing, I want to tell you that I found a really good website and I want to share it with you, since people often ask me, where can I watch dramas? And since most of them are on Netflix or Disney Plus, I want to recommend a website that sells subscriptions at a much lower price. The site is called ggpic.com. There are a lot of streaming platforms with prices up to 10 times lower than what you would pay on official sites. Buying is very simple. I add the product I want to the cart. On the official website, it costs more than $200 a year. But here, you add it to the cart, enter the promo code, and they give you 15% off. You end up paying only about $18 a year. Hurry up and go to GGPIC while there are still products available. Don't forget to use my discount code. I'll leave the link in the description and in the pinned comment. Back to the story, Suhyun finds out that her younger brother wants to level up so his friends won't look down on him. Moved by this, she decides to help him. During the game, she meets a hero. He is the Black Dragon, who saves her from some raging lunatics. Together, they fight more enemies and receive many bonuses. As they keep playing, they realize that their skills combine very well. This way, they manage to defeat many enemies and become closer and closer. He introduces her to his team. While they talk, they are surprised to learn that Suhyun is a woman, and that she is 19 years old since the Black Dragon says he is 22. She tells him that she's using her younger brother's account and that her player name is usually Fred. That's how they start joking that they should get married in the game. This makes the guys very uncomfortable. Then they leave to talk alone. Suhyun feels comfortable and tells him that her mother passed away and that since then, she has had to do everything on her own. When he hears this, the Black Dragon promises to take care of her. They both share that they don't have close family and agree to be there for each other from now on. Over time, they become closer and decide to meet in person. But when the day finally comes, Suhyun is disappointed to discover that the Black Dragon was just a 15-year-old boy. Feeling betrayed, she leaves the place and he follows her to apologize. This quickly draws everyone's attention. The boy tells her that age doesn't matter and that they are destined to be together. Then he kneels down to offer her a necklace as a symbol of his love. People get excited and tell Suhyun to accept, but she replies that age isn't the problem. It's the boy's existence. She tells him that he's a nerd, a weirdo, a liar, and that she finds him very unpleasant. The 15-year-old boy is devastated. Then his bodyguards arrive and tell him he has to go to class, and since he doesn't move, they take him by force. Many years went by like this until Suhyun managed to achieve her goals. She became a workaholic and pressures her bosses for not being as dedicated as she is. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a young man is talking to a high-ranking official about Ban Yu-yong, the grandson of the president of a large company. He reports that he studied at Harvard, got a master's degree in economics, achieved the highest grades, and infiltrated rival companies to gather information. Then the informant scolds others for arriving 3 minutes late. Then the senior executive realizes that he was Ban Yu-yong, that is, the president's grandson. He reveals that he infiltrated to expose a corrupt person. In the same company, some employees talk about Suhyun, known as the director killer because she exposes those who are incompetent, abusive, or harass others. Because of that, they all end up resigning. So now they will welcome a new director and hope that he will be different. For his part, the new director will be Yu Yong, because he has to conduct an investigation of the company. However, we realize that he was still the same, because he had hidden passions. He really liked rock music, and he even went to concerts in disguise so his grandmother wouldn't find out. One night, Suhyun takes a colleague home. He tells her that she should buy a better car, but she prefers to help her team. At that moment, the black dragon was in a hurry and lightly bumped into her. Although there is no material damage, she wants to call the insurance company. He gives her his card and tells her he's in a hurry, but she thinks he wants to escape, so she gets in her car and follows him to the hospital. They already knew each other, but don't recognize one another, though she finds him familiar. When they arrive at the hospital, the president tells him that she will hand over the company to him. But she demands perfection because she doesn't accept mistakes. At that moment, the black dragon relives a painful memory, but when he returns home, he takes refuge in his sanctuary, a place full of manga, figures, and rock and roll. The next day at the company, the new director begins to tour the facilities, carefully observing every detail that could be improved. During his tour, he runs into an old friend who was almost like a brother to him. His name is Chaiwan. While they talk about the current state of the company, his reputation as a ladies' man also comes up. Chiwon had always been with many women, although he took it lightly. However, the director reminds them that he must stay focused on his work. Later, when the staff finds out that there is officially a new director, they ask the protagonist to go to his office to greet him, since she is the manager. But when she enters, she finds him just as he is changing. At that moment, she manages to see a very striking tattoo on his back, which was a black dragon. Surprised, she wants to scream, but he quickly approaches and covers her mouth, trying to prevent her from saying anything inappropriate. The protagonist pushes him away and calls him a pervert, although the director says that if there is a victim, it's him, since she entered without warning. Then they talk about last night's incident and agree not to mention it at the company. As he leaves, he notes that Suhyun is a very dangerous woman and that he should keep an eye on her. That night, Suhyun visits her friend and tells her everything that happened. She tells her that she didn't expect him to be the crazy guy from the night before and suspects that he's resentful. But she assures her that this time she wants to do things right. Her friend suggests that maybe he does too. Suhyun decides to focus on working well with the new director since she doesn't want to keep being called the director slayer. The next day, the director formally introduces himself to the team, says he knows the manager's reputation, and tells her that he won't be like the other directors, but warns her that if she wants to challenge him, she will lose completely. In his office, his assistant praises his speech and prepares him a triple-shot coffee. Even though he hates it, he drinks it and says it's perfect because he always has to keep up appearances. When he leaves work, he stops in front of a cafe that advertises a sweet drink, which will become his favorite, but is not very fitting for a director of his caliber. When he was about to order it, Suhyun arrives. And to keep up appearances, he orders a triple-shot coffee. On the way, he sees that they are selling a limited edition item. When he wants to buy it, a child wants it too, so he has to fight with him to get it. But just at that moment, Suhyun appears again. The director has to pretend to give it to the child as a gift so the manager will keep walking. This makes him feel even more threatened because he's almost been discovered for who he really is twice now. Because of this, he decides to get her out of the company. The next day, he talks to his assistant about his plan. She tells him that Suhyun won't let herself be fired without a reason, so the director decides to make her resign as part of his plan. In the following meetings, he gives her impossible questions and assignments, but she responds efficiently and completes every task. In the bathroom, a high-ranking colleague congratulates her. Suhyun responds that she was just doing her job. They talk about the demands of being a woman in that work environment. Suhyun asks her to be allies. Sometime later, the team organizes a party for the new director. When it's time to drink, both of them compete to see who can handle more. In the end, she ends up winning, and since the director was drunk, she gets him a taxi. Before leaving, they have an honest conversation. She tells him that the more people try to break her, the stronger she becomes. She always gives her all and assumes that bothers her superiors. She also thinks he's still angry about what happened that night. The director says her behavior doesn't bother him, and he has already forgotten the incident, although he doesn't mention the real reason he wants to keep her away, which is that she almost discovered his true personality. Later, Suhyun meets with her father, who is closing his store for repairs. She offers to help him with money, but he tells her that he wants to stay active. While he feels young, she jokes by telling him that he already smells like an old man. For his part, the director wakes up remembering what happened the night before and also relives an accident from the past. This motivates him to fulfill his grandmother's demands. In the office, Suhyun's friends talk about what happened at the bar and how she beat the director. But just at that moment, the new director appears, asking for detailed reports. Then Suhyun goes to talk to him, but they end up arguing. She wants to get along with him, but there's always tension between them. The director's secretary admits that he could be accused of abuse of power, so he has to control himself more. Suhyun, for her part, talks to her coworker, who reveals to her that the new director is the president's grandson, the heir to the company. She assumes that his attitude is because he's a spoiled child. To reveal his true identity, Suhyun decides to follow him after work. She sees him change into a more rock-inspired look and enter a theater. There, they meet face-to-face but don't recognize each other. When the show starts, she notices that he's a completely different person from the one at the office, so she takes pictures of him. Later, the director goes to her house to confront her. Her father thinks he's her boyfriend and makes everything easier so they can meet. He asks her to delete the photos and sign a contract, where he guarantees her job in exchange for being at his complete disposal. She signs without noticing that clause and jokes about his dragon tattoo. The next day, they get along better, talk about his double life, and she encourages him not to hide so much. Then, he asks her to accompany him to a party, and they both pick out clothes together. And there he defends Suhyun from a very rude man, pushing him into the pool and calling her darling. After that moment, they ask him why he called her darling. The director, without losing his composure, responds that she is a valuable employee and that he won't allow anyone to hurt her. When everything is over, they both walk away toward his car since it would start raining soon. Once inside, Suhyun says that she's hungry because she hasn't eaten anything all day, so they decide to stop by a fast food restaurant. There, she orders delicious things, even a chocolate milk, because she's interested in a promotional stuffed toy. He asks her why she's so interested, and she replies that it's simply because it's free and cute. When they finish, he tells her that he's free for the rest of the day. When she hears this, she leaves with a smile while he records a new voice note, saying that she's not as dangerous as he thought. Later at home, Suhyun realizes that the dress the director gave her cost more than $2,000. Alarmed, she wants to return it. Meanwhile, her friend is chatting with Saiwon. He confesses that his girlfriend left him for being too nice to all women, something that, according to him, just comes naturally. Suhyun's friend doesn't seem bothered by that, and she invites him out that night. But before that, he gives her some advice to improve her shop's advertising. After a fun night, they both wake up very early. It's clear there's good chemistry between them, especially from his side. Meanwhile, the main characters start to establish themselves as a very efficient work duo to the point where they can communicate without needing to speak. One of them wants to do a field study to evaluate sales in shopping malls. In one of those, the director gives instructions to improve their income. Then, in an eyeglasses store, he helps a customer who turns out to be the lead singer of his favorite band. Later, Yoo-jung meets with his secretary, who asks him if he will go ahead with his plan to fire Suhyun. However, he admits that he no longer intends to do so. He acknowledges that the manager is quite efficient. Interestingly, Suhyun thinks something similar about him. She confides to her friends that although her boss is strange, she's learning to understand him. That night, the director tells the manager that he's going home, because if he stays beyond working hours, it will make him look bad in front of the other employees. Later, at home, the director tries to place the autograph given to him by the vocalist of his favorite band in his secret shrine, but someone knocks on the door. It turned out to be Siwon, who was very excited about Suhyun's friend. They both talk, and the director comments that falling in love is dangerous because it can hurt too much. Siwon jokes about his first love, making the director feel uncomfortable. For his part, he requests a cleaning service for his house, but he personally takes care of his shrine because he remembers the words of Suhyun, who told him that he should enjoy his passions without feeling ashamed. Meanwhile, very expensive gifts arrive at his friend's store: a robot waiter, decorative plants, even an ice sculpture. When he arrives, Suhyun discovers that everything was sent by the Black Dragon, the guy who once got her hopes up but lied to her. Angry, she says she will sell everything to at least get some benefit at work. The main characters share a tense moment in the elevator, but are interrupted by the secretary. As they walk down the hallway, they come across a doll. She assumes it belongs to some child, but the director is terrified because he thinks it's his. But when he checks, he realizes that his is in his cabinet. Then he remembers that the day he was rejected by Suhyun, his grandmother destroyed his sanctuary and hid him, telling him that his father's death was his fault. She also burned the stuffed animal he loved the most. Back in the office, he hears Suhyun's coworkers making fun of men with childish tastes. Hurt, he pretends that he doesn't like that kind of dolls and asks Suhyun to give him back the dress. Back at home, the director was sad, so he wants to distract himself with a video game. But he has an electrical problem, so he calls an outside repair service, offering to pay 5 times more if they solve the problem quickly. And interestingly, the person he calls is Suhyun's father, who accepts and sends her. When she arrives, the director sees her through the cameras, but he can't make out her face. On the other hand, she does recognize the house. Now we learn about the director's sad past. He was happy with his parents until one day, while they were out for a drive, a truck driven by a careless driver crashed into their vehicle. He survived, but unfortunately his parents did not. After the funeral, his grandmother blamed him for what happened, maybe because of the pain of losing her only child. The fact is that she treated the boy with contempt, and even though he was suffering deeply, he ended up believing he was to blame. When he saw his grandmother crying, he realized that he wasn't the only one who had lost a loved one. That's how he decided to take his father's place and become a worthy successor. But to face the challenges that came with it, he needed a space of his own to heal. That's how his secret sanctuary came to be. Back in the present. Suhyun looks at that room carefully. The director notices and pretends that it's his nephew's room. She pretends to believe him, although she already suspected the truth. While fixing the damaged outlet, she jokes that she's not as good as her father, but she still manages to get things done. When the light device starts working, she provokes him to get him to confess the truth. He asks her what she's after, and she replies that she just wants to get to know him better. In the middle of that intimate moment, she stumbles and he catches her. But the romantic moment is interrupted. An urgent call reveals that Suhyun's father has been in an accident and is in the hospital. The director uses his influence to get him a luxury room, but fortunately his father wasn't seriously hurt. But anyway, he thanks the director and confesses that he hates hospitals because they remind him of visiting his sick mother. The director notices his sadness, so he decides to leave without saying much. Soon after, his younger brother arrives, hears about the accident, and, seeing it's minor, starts joking with his sister. Later in the hallway, Suhyun discovers that the director left her a gift, the free stuffed animal she wanted so much. The next day, her absence from the office surprises everyone. At the hospital, her brother insists on taking turns to take care of their father. Later, she meets with the director who, seeing her car in bad condition, takes her to a mechanic. There, she talks about her mother, and he tells her how his hobbies helped him overcome his traumas. Also, since her car will take a while to be fixed, the director rents one to give to her. After receiving so much help, she starts to change the way she sees him. Sometime later, while the director was walking through the mall, some kids bumped into him and broke his tablet. One of the parents apologizes and offers to pay for it, but the director replies that it's not necessary. It's enough if they stay loyal to his company's products. However, that tablet contained confidential information, so to recover his data, he decides to ask Suhyun for help. She asks him for his computer password to recover the information he needs. He gives it to her, although he's embarrassed, since it's in Japanese and means, "I am the devil." Despite that awkward moment, Suhyun manages to access the files and saves the documents he needs. Thanks to that, the director is able to look good in front of his demanding grandmother. That same night, Siwon visits Suhyun's friend's restaurant, where he talks with a friend. About his recent breakup, he insists that he has no feelings for his ex, but his face seems to say otherwise. But that's because he was looking at Suhyun's friend. After paying the bill and leaving, he comes back alone to the restaurant and finds the girl dancing while cleaning and finally asks her name. She, somewhat distant, confesses to him that she is divorced and that the process was very painful, so she is not looking for any relationship. Later at home, Siwon has dinner with his parents, who ask him about the director and ask him to take good care of him. He replies that he treats him like a brother. His parents have a loving and happy marriage, something he admires. When he's left alone, he checks the profile of Suhyun's friend and, without thinking much about it, likes it. In a flashback, we see that same friend had met with Black Dragon to apologize for what happened. After he confessed his love to the main character, they meet again in the present. She still doesn't know his real name and simply calls him Black Dragon. He asks her to keep his past a secret and leaves just before Suhyun arrives. Later, a conflict arises in the office. Suhyun doesn't approve of a decision made by the director because it could cause losses. He stands firm in his decision, and to convince him, she tells him that a true successor wouldn't act that way. The discussion reaches the board of directors. After thinking it over, he sticks to his plan, which creates a lot of tension. To lighten the mood, he invites her to a video game arcade where they compete in a dance game. Because she hates losing, she ends up with her shoelaces tied together. At that moment, Suyeon's friend calls her to tell her not to go to the restaurant because the black dragon is there, without knowing that the director and he are the same person. For his part, he also doesn't suspect that Suyeon is the girl who made him fall in love online and then broke his heart. To avoid running into him, Suyeon hides with the director in a corner of the place. Her friend, noticing that reaction, puts two and two together and finally discovers that the director and the black dragon are the same person. Meanwhile, hidden and squeezed together, Suhyun murmurs that he doesn't want to see someone he really dislikes, revealing that he's reliving uncomfortable emotions, and the director, a bit uneasy about the closeness, asks him to move away a little. After escaping the situation, he accompanies him to the bus stop. There, Suhyun gives him a stuffed animal Suhyun noticed he liked. The director, with a shy smile, says it's just a simple replica, but he'll accept it out of courtesy anyway. The next day, after a meeting at the mall, Suhyun gives him an improved list of stores for the project. The director, impressed, accepts the suggestions, and the team starts working to meet the new goals. Later, Suhyun and her friend start talking about the Black Dragon. Her friend asks if she'd see him in a different light now that they've both grown up. But Suhyun firmly says no. The disappointment was so great that she could never see him as a man. That same day, her friend sees the director with Siwon and discovers that they are good friends, so she goes over to talk to him. They both discover that they are involved in the couple's drama. Siwon confesses that he has been like an older brother to him. He was the one who encouraged him to meet his first love, but when he found out that he was brutally rejected, he felt really bad for him, because he was scarred for life. When they discover that both are still resentful, they conclude that if the main characters fall in love now and then find out who they really are, everything could explode into chaos, both in the company and in their personal lives. So they decide to intervene. Siwon suggests to the director that it's not wise to have Suyeon around, hinting that he himself is interested in someone at work. The director misunderstands everything and thinks he's talking about himself, meaning he believes that Siwon is in love with Suyeon. For her part, Suyeon's friend sets up a few dates for her, but she feels uncomfortable. Back at the company, she overhears a subordinate talking about Siwon, who has been asking about her and might be planning to transfer her to another branch. Later, the director sees them out together and convinced that Suyeon is interested in his friend, he goes back home. Feeling a bit down, he starts reading a manga about a girl who falls in love with a womanizer. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Suyeon doesn't beat around the bush. She wants to know why Siwon is interested in her. He, a bit nervous, clarifies that he is interested, but not in a romantic way. She, serious and direct, replies that she already knew, but warns him that if he puts her job at risk, he'll regret it. Frightened, he tries to explain what's going on, but she doesn't want to listen, so she simply says goodbye. That night, Suhyun receives a visit from the director, so they end up going to dinner together. And while they're eating, he directly asks her if she's interested in his friend. She doesn't know what to say, so she shows him a manga where a girl falls in love with a womanizer. And she recommends he read it to avoid problems. Suhyun, unfazed, responds that Siwon is not her type, which ends up relieving the director. With that, of course, both of them feel more at ease. The next day, the company is informed that there are promising new products, but one in particular with great potential was rejected. Intrigued, Suhyun decides to go personally to that rural area where it is produced, to try to convince the owner. When he finds out, the director decides to follow her to the countryside. Both of them meet the lady, a woman with a strong character and firm values. She confesses that she doesn't want to sell to the greedy heirs in order to gain her trust. Suhyun improvises and introduces the director as her brother, and claims that he has the suit and luxury car because he's the chauffeur. Both of them work hard on the farm, harvesting, carrying boxes, and cleaning everything to impress the old lady. At the end of the day, the woman invites them to stay at her house. During dinner, they pretend to be siblings and gently argue as if they were a real family. Suhyun keeps insisting on the benefits of working together, while the director observes how the lady works just to make her grandchildren proud, more than for the money. At nightfall, the old woman offers to let them stay the night already under the moon. They share some drinks, talk about their first loves, and make a toast, because they were a total disaster. Then, Suhyun receives a call from his friend, who is still worried about their true identities being discovered. When she returns, she finds the director pretending to be asleep, but suddenly he moves, gets very close, and kisses her. In a soft voice, he tells her that he heard the call, then kisses her again. And this time, Suhyun responds to him. All night long, Suhyun couldn't sleep, as the memories of the kiss kept invading his mind. At dawn, he noticed that he had slept poorly and went outside, reflecting on the possibility that he might be in love with her. When they saw each other, they both pretended to have rested, although their faces showed otherwise. Later, they decided to take a walk around the area, and at the spring, they drew water together. Suhyun, a bit tense, seemed upset by the director's silence since he was the one who kissed her. At that moment, she stumbled on rocky ground, but he managed to catch her just in time. The subject of the kiss lingered in the air, but neither of them dared to mention it. Back at the old woman's house, she revealed that she knew the director's true identity. Despite that, she decided to sign with them, moved by the sincere interest they had shown in her life and her products. Then, they both returned to the city, and during the trip, she hoped he would mention the kiss. However, he preferred to play music and keep the conversation light. Once at home, Suhyun confronted him directly, but he said it was something unimportant. That made her deeply angry. He told her clearly that he didn't see her as a romantic figure and that he preferred things to stay that way. When she was left alone, frustrated, she decided to fix the door with a hammer blow to vent her anger. For his part, the director didn't understand the reason for Suhyun's anger. He vaguely remembered leaving her alone that night, but he didn't remember the kiss. His alcohol tolerance was very low, and that's why he had lost his memory. Besides, he had overheard her telling her friend that she didn't see him as a man, and that hurt his pride. Trying to regain his confidence, he started training and talked to his secretary about her husband, trying to understand what made a man a woman's ideal type. When he realized that he had several of those qualities, he felt a bit better during lunch. A coworker suggested that Suhyun spent a lot of time with the director for personal gain, but she denied that idea, assuring them that she didn't see him that way. The director overheard the conversation and reacted with fake calmness, although it was clear that it affected him. Later, Suhyun received a call from her friend, who set her up on a date with a kind and stable lawyer, assuring her that he was her ideal type. When the director found out, he asked to see her at the end of the day, right before she went with him. He heard his grandmother speak well of her performance, although she was worried that he was wasting his time with someone who didn't value him romantically. This made him not want to get emotionally involved. The director wanted to focus solely on his work. That night, the protagonist, still confused, spoke with her coworker under the pretext of asking about a manga character. Although in reality, she was trying to understand the director's contradictory signals. Her classmate, without beating around the bush, made her see that he was interested in her. This brought back to her mind the idea that the director might have pretended not to remember the kiss because he was shy. Driven by that assumption, she went to see him. But she encountered him acting completely distant, curt, professional, and very cold. The director's attitude left her even more confused. That same night, she decided to return the manga to him. This, in turn, caused them both to end up arguing, and they both said very hurtful things to each other because they attacked each other's insecurities. She said that the director was an otaku and that with those interests, he would never have a partner. He pointed out that she has very bad taste in men, and that's why she had been deceived so easily. In the past, the tension was such that, for the first time, she managed to understand why she had treated her first love badly. Hurt by all that, she decided to accept the blind dates her friend had arranged for her. When her friends found out, they quietly celebrated, feeling that this way they could prevent their friends from repeating the same mistakes of the past. Later, both friends talked about their own relationship. She was open to having a good time, but she didn't want any commitments, although he, on the other hand, wanted something different. After saying goodbye, he runs into his ex-girlfriend. Although she apologized for how things ended, he made it clear that he didn't want to go back to a relationship marked by jealousy. He stated that a partner should make you feel safe and happy, not worried all the time. So he asked her not to contact him again. Meanwhile, the protagonist went out with the lawyer. The date turned out better than she expected, so much so that she agreed to see him again. At work, however, the relationship between her and the director was colder than the top of Mount Everest. The change was so noticeable that everyone in the office noticed it. Despite all that, the director couldn't stop thinking about her, and his discomfort was obvious when he saw her leaving work accompanied by the lawyer. Nevertheless, he had no time to lose. His grandmother had invited him to a very important event where he would finally be recognized as her grandson. During the ceremony, he received an award for his contributions, but the joy was not complete. He discovered that his grandmother was considering hiring a professional manager. In her speech, she compared the company to a child, implying that she did not trust her grandson to take care of it, partly because she blamed him for the death of her own son. Meanwhile, the protagonist was going on a second date with the lawyer, enjoying the evening without complications. The director, for his part, attended the last event before dedicating himself completely to earning his grandmother's approval. But in the midst of the noise and music, he realized that he wasn't having any fun at all. He remembered his John, remembered the kiss, and at that moment, he knew he couldn't keep ignoring what he felt. Driven by his emotions, he went to look for her. He found her in a store trying on clothes. Without warning, he entered the fitting room where she was and kissed her. With that gesture, he confessed that the kiss at the old lady's house had been his first kiss. But their passionate moment doesn't last long because they were interrupted by a salesperson. She decides to leave first and distract him. And thanks to that, the director is able to leave as well. Then she goes back to the lawyer and he notices something strange and asks her if there will be another date, but she ends his hopes and tells him there won't be a third date. Right at that moment, the director shows up with an urgent work matter, and she says goodbye to the lawyer and leaves with him outside the mall. The director shows vulnerability for the first time. He tells her that he forgot about that kiss, but he didn't consider it a mistake, let alone something he regrets. Hours later, since she was very efficient, she decides to compare the good and bad points of the guy, but to her surprise, she only finds flaws. Even so, she soon realizes that all of that is useless because he belongs to another world, one she can't access. That feeling is confirmed when she finds out that he has finally been recognized as the official successor of the company. His grandmother had finally tested him. With that truth in her heart, she decides to nip any feelings in the bud. He senses some distance and soon asks her for an explanation. She directly tells him she's afraid of causing issues with his grandmother. Meanwhile, Suhyun also decides to distance himself from the protagonist's friend, knowing that she doesn't want a relationship. The days go by and the two friends meet to talk about their lives, but they don't go into much detail until one day in an elevator, the director accidentally overhears that the protagonist will have dinner with someone. He also hears the name of the restaurant, so he decides to go. When he arrives, he sees her with other people and feels a bit jealous until he realizes that she is having dinner with her family. When they see him, they invite him to join and he accepts immediately. During dinner, her brother gives him a clear warning and tells him not to ever hurt his sister. Meanwhile, the director's grandmother finds out that he doesn't allow anyone into his office. This makes her suspicious. So she decides to go, asks the secretary for help to enter his office, and the secretary, worried, informs the director. When they find out, he and the protagonist decide to go to the place and move his things to her house. But since they didn't have time, they ask their friends for help. Suhyun manages to get a few minutes. Then the protagonist's friend blocks the way with her truck. After doing her part, they run into each other. Suhyun keeps his composure, although he can't help but ask if she missed him. At the director's house, he manages to clean up the basics. He hopes the secret studio stays hidden. Then, finally, his grandmother arrives, and she doesn't discover the hidden door. But she finds something else, a photo kept between the books, from when the director was a child and was with his parents. The lady, upon seeing it, gets angry and yells at him that he has no right to feel bad because she blames him for the terrible accident. Then she breaks the frame and leaves, leaving him alone and very sad. He can't help but shed a few tears. The protagonist, noticing that the grandmother has left, goes to look for him. He tells her what happened in the past. He insisted on going to an event, and that's when the terrible accident happened. When she returns home, her father notices that she is a little sad. She tries to hide it so he won't worry, but inside she was very confused. The next day, she meets with the director and expresses her fears and concerns about the problems that could arise if they continue with their feelings. But he is convinced he is not afraid of anything. If she is by his side, she clears everything up and also admits that she likes him. He confesses to her that everything he loves is a secret, and now she will also become part of his big secret. And so, just like that, they are officially a couple. Both are closer than ever. After a long walk full of conversations, he walks her home. By mutual agreement, they decide that it's best to be careful so that no one discovers their relationship. Meanwhile, the director's friend decides to move on. As a symbolic act, he unfollows the protagonist's friend on social media. However, fate brings them together again. She remembers those days when he used to go to her restaurant, and just when she's thinking about leaving before going in. They end up running into each other, talk for a bit, and he mentions his reputation as a womanizer. He says that despite everything people said about him, he was never unfaithful. In addition, he confesses his feelings for her, and the protagonist's friend also confesses her feelings, and that she recently changed her mind and agrees to have a romantic relationship with him. At the same time, the protagonist invites the director to her house, but in reality, it was her father who practically forced them to come in. They take the opportunity to look over some of the things she had brought, then have dinner with her family. Her brother doesn't hide his distrust. He thinks it's too soon for her to bring her boyfriend home so quickly. He's worried that she might get hurt, but the protagonist assures him that he's not like that. At work, both of them do their best not to show their feelings. Although it's not always easy, she tries to hide it by treating him coldly. He, of course, doesn't take it well. In the end, she apologizes to him, but he tells her that he'll ask for compensation. Later, she meets her friend at a restaurant, where she finds out that she's dating the director's friend. She never thought things would turn out this way. Then, Saiwon talks with the director, and he tells him that he hopes he finds a loving, attentive partner, someone who compliments him. But they joke that Suhyun is the complete opposite. When the meeting ends, the main character gets a call from the director. He has some ideas for an outing, but she prefers a quiet place without too many people around. She travels by bus and notices several girls talking about the handsome heir, which makes her feel a bit insecure. But not everyone had bought the story. A veteran of the company with years of experience starts to notice certain details. Although the director's words to the protagonist seem normal, she senses something unusual since the director is rarely this kind to anyone. She assumes the worst and makes a direct accusation. But the protagonist firmly denies everything and tells her that next time she accuses her, it will be in front of witnesses, since she won't allow anyone to speak badly about her. Sometime later, the director meets with his friend and confesses that he met someone. Saiwon understands everything instantly. A few years ago, he was in the same situation, but the director tells him that's not what this is about. That night, he has a date with his new girlfriend in a place far from the city. Then, a song starts playing that was once special for Suhyun, but she doesn't enjoy it the same way anymore because it brings back an unpleasant memory. He offers to change that because now it will become their new song. In the office, their gestures become more intimate. He didn't really know how to act because she was his first girlfriend. Even though he was willing to learn, she wasn't completely sure either. But she remembers something curious. She started to see him differently when she discovered that his password was "I am the devil." Meanwhile, Siwon talks with the protagonist's friend and says that he found out about the secret relationship. He admits that he doesn't dare to separate them because the director looks really happy. She seems a little anxious, but still thinks her friend is happier. Back with the protagonist, she finds an old necklace. It's the same one that the Black Dragon had. She recognizes it, along with other things that seem suspicious to her. When she meets her boyfriend, she can't help but question him. She shows him the necklace, and that triggers the buried memories of that traumatic moment. They both finally discover the truth. Now they know that they both hurt each other deeply. She is so shocked that she decides to go home alone. And he, for his part, is left completely stunned. Here we realize why Suhyun despised the Black Dragon so much. It turns out that in her childhood, a boy falsely accused her, and it was her father who had to apologize, but he never doubted her. That injustice planted a sense of distrust inside her, and that distrust only grew bigger with her mother's death. Since then, she vowed to protect her brother and support her father, which forged her strong character. That's why she felt so bad when the Black Dragon lied to her, And that's why she reacted in such an evil way. Even though she knew it wasn't the right thing to do, she believed she could trust someone again, but once again, she ended up being disappointed. The next day, the director resumes his duties, although he seemed to be the same. His secretary notices that his gaze is distant, showing how sad he is. For her part, Suhyun meets with her friend and confesses everything that happened. She now knows that the director and the Black Dragon are the same person. She confesses that she had found out before and apologizes for not telling her. Suhyun gets upset, but she knows her friend didn't mean any harm. At the same time, the director talks to his friend and tells him that he already knows who she is. Suhyun asks him if he still wants to keep their plans to go to a restaurant, and even though they had already ended things, he decides to go since he just wanted to see her outside the restaurant. The couple decides to talk. He doesn't want to end the relationship, but she needs to think things over at work. He asks her to talk in the afternoon. When the time comes, Suhyun tells him that she can't feel anything anymore. She says she can't tolerate lies, and that both of them made mistakes. She admits that they both hurt each other, and that's why she doesn't think their relationship will work. Then she meets up with her friend, and she blames herself for having been deceived by the Black Dragon, for having been so alone, and for hating that version of herself. The director, for his part, vents that he thinks it's unfair that an agreement between two people ends just because one of them no longer wants to be with him. But he understands that he can't force anyone to stay by his side. As if that weren't enough, a photograph starts circulating, showing the director having a meal with Suhyun's family. The rumor spreads quickly and even reaches his grandmother. She manages to justify it by saying it's just a simple act of courtesy. He supports the story and his grandmother gives him a warning. She tells him that if he sees that woman around again, there will be consequences, but not against her, but against him, because she can't fire Suhyun since she is a key figure. So the director returns to his cold and distant attitude. Everything seems to go back to normal, but not for Suhyun. That cold, distant facade hurts her a lot. One day in the rain, she comes home and feels really bad. She apologizes to her father for not being strong, he comforts her, and her brother, seeing her condition. He assumes it's all the director's fault, but she tells him that's not the case because she was the one who ended the relationship. The next day, everyone notices the director's absence. The secretary decides to go look for him, but since no one's heard from him, Suhyun decides to take the initiative, buys medicine, and heads to his house. From below, the secretary sees her go in and decides to inform the president. The important thing, however, happens inside. Suhyun takes care of him like before. She admits the harm she caused him, confessing that all this time she doesn't hate him, but hates herself. She was afraid of repeating the mistakes of the past and hurting him again. But he listens to her and hugs her, telling her that she is his coolest secret. But happiness doesn't last long. That night, everything would fall apart. They share a moment of peace, loving each other intensely. And at dawn, when he gets ready to go to work, he receives the news that he has been fired. He doesn't understand what happened. He thinks his secretary betrayed him, but he finds out that wasn't the case. On the contrary, she was trying to protect him. The one who revealed everything was a photographer. The image went viral and ended up in his grandmother's hands. When Suhyun arrives at the office, the atmosphere is very tense because the rumors turned out to be true. The Black Dragon meets with his grandmother that same day. He expected her to be indifferent as always, but instead, he was met with venom. She looks at him with contempt and tells him that it disgusts her to share blood with him, and tells him that he will never live up to her expectations. He doesn't cry or scream. He simply accepts that he will never be good enough for her. Later, in his car, he remembers everything: the humiliation, the rejection, and the useless effort he made to please her. At that moment, Suhyun writes to him, and when they meet, the pain eases. The next day, the Black Dragon meets with his loyal secretary. She confesses that she resigned to protect him because she already knew everything: his secret study, his tastes, and his private life. She also confesses that she has supported him since he was a child. She never told him, but she saw him as a son. He, deeply moved, listens to her in silence and also thanks her for being there for him. Later, Suhyun invites him to her house so he can play with her brother. He accepts, and in that small house, his life seems simpler. Later, he visits his father's hardware store and the Black Dragon offers to help. They both work side by side all day, and in the end, he is the one who prepares dinner for everyone. That night, while the rest were sleeping, the couple takes refuge in Suhyun's room. And while drinking his favorite hot chocolate for the first time in a long time, he feels at home. The next day, Suhyun goes back to work, but when he arrives at the company, he finds out that he has been demoted. Now he will be part of the maintenance team. A subtle move by the president to force his resignation. But Suhyun doesn't give in because he already has knowledge in the area, and most importantly, he has a lot of determination. He won't leave without putting up a fight. That decision, however, affects his relationships. A coworker reproaches him, telling him that she used to hate him for being arrogant, but also admired him a lot. Now she despises him for humiliating himself. In that way, Suhyun doesn't defend himself. He just says that he's willing to sacrifice himself for his family. After some time, the president calls her, wanting to understand why she doesn't leave. Suhyun doesn't waste this opportunity and tells her that her grandson did everything to win back her affection, not to become her heir. And that taking it out on him is cruel, even for her. The president doesn't respond and Suhyun leaves without saying anything else. On the other hand, Siwon and Suhyun's friend face their own conflicts because the ex-husband shows up, but Siwon stands up to him. He also confronts the mother-in-law who recently found out that her daughter separated because of an affair. The woman, embarrassed, apologizes, then tells her that her new boyfriend is quite handsome. Later on, while they're walking, Suhyun's friend keeps her distance and tells Siwon that she doesn't want a very intense relationship, that they need to set boundaries. He is left speechless because he feels that something isn't right. Sometime later, the company event finally takes place. Everyone is present, and that's when the former director appears and goes up on stage. It turns out that he contacted his former secretary to ask her to investigate the new director, and he discovered that the new director had a criminal record and was connected to corrupt people. With that information, he went to see his grandmother and told her that it would be best if he took over as director again. Otherwise, it could affect the company. In addition, he wanted Suhyun to get her old position back. The grandmother agreed, but under one condition. If he fails, he must give up his family name and leave the country. The Black Dragon decided to risk everything. That's how we got to this point, where he announces that he will take over as the company's director again. However, not everything is perfect. The protagonist starts to notice that people are constantly talking about her relationship with him, but she decides to focus on her work. She tells her friends that she has worked hard at the company, and that if she leaves, the project will fall apart. As the days go by, the director starts to distance himself a bit, and that's when the secretary confesses to Suhyun that he has an agreement with his grandmother. If the project fails, he must leave the country and give up his last name without hesitation. She meets with him and asks why he agreed to something like that. He simply replies that he'll do anything for her, and that he won't fail in any way. Time keeps passing, and the main character receives a very important proposal through her friend. An acquaintance from another company wants to hire her, offering her a better position. However, she has doubts. She tells her that she's currently working on a very important project, and she can't leave it yet. The woman tells her to take her time to think about it. On the other hand, the protagonist's friend reflects on what she said. Siwon realizes that he has been closing himself off to love because of distrust, since the person he trusted the most ended up betraying him. That's why he slowly begins to reconsider his attitude. Meanwhile, the project continues to move forward, and the director chooses a comic book character as the main figure. However, everything gets complicated when the director becomes involved in a misunderstanding. They accuse him of hitting a child, when in reality he saved him from suffering third-degree burns. The media turns this into a scandal, and the creator of the comic withdraws his character, the protagonist, seeing that this could ruin the project. He moves heaven and earth to get in touch with the author, and manages to arrange a meeting where they have an honest conversation. And thanks to that, they are able to resolve the misunderstanding. Sometime later, the security camera footage is made public, and it confirms that the director is actually a hero. Sometime later, the project they had worked on is a complete success. During his speech, the director reveals his curious hobbies, mentioning that stories like the one about the Pirate King helped him keep going, and that he no longer wants to hide that part of himself. He says he will be happier living freely, and everyone applauds him. After the event, the director meets with his grandmother and confesses to her that he always wished she would love him, that all this time he has tried to fill the void left by his father, but he has realized that he can't do it, and now he just wants to be himself. because that way everything will be easier. He also shows him the results of his project and how it was a complete success. He asks him to keep his part of the deal and not to fire the protagonist. He tells him that if he wants, he can fire him instead. For her part, the protagonist is harassed by journalists since it was publicly revealed that she is the director's girlfriend. He shows up to protect her, but the couple becomes the center of all the headlines. At home, she reads the malicious comments, and that's when the woman who had offered her the new job contacts her again, asking her to reconsider the offer. That same night, the main characters meet and talk about how things will go during Christmas, but suddenly he reveals that he already knows about the job offer. He tells her that she can leave if she wants, that she can even do it tomorrow. She then tells him that she'll do as he says, but she gets angry, so she goes home. During the night, she talks with her friend, and her friend tells her that ever since she got the offer, deep down, she already had a clear answer. For his part, the director realizes that she is behaving differently. She doesn't reply to his messages, although she does respond to everyone else's. This worries him, so he wants to go see her to understand what's going on. But he comes to the conclusion that maybe his words were misunderstood. Maybe she thought he didn't care if she left, but in reality, what he meant was that whatever she chose, he would go with her. After talking to his secretary about the matter, he realizes that mistake and goes to look for her. When he arrives, he notices that her things from the studio are now decorating the place. She explains to him that she did understand his words, although she did so a little late. However, she tells him that she doesn't want to leave, that from the very beginning she was clear about her answer, that she would stay with him no matter what happens. She also mentions that she was at home all day, tidying up and waiting for him with the food ready. Meanwhile, his secretary meets with the president to tell her what she thinks about the way she has treated the director. She tells her that she has been a cruel woman because she has shown no love to that little boy after he was orphaned. And on top of that, she blamed him unfairly. The lady realizes that maybe she is right because, after all, he was her grandson. On the other hand, the protagonist's friend can't stop thinking about Siwon. She is about to call him, but suddenly he calls her first. That's when he confesses that he loves her and that he wants to try again. The problem is that her phone is connected to the local audio system, and the whole confession is broadcast over the speakers. The customers listen and record everything. She, blushing, tells him that she loves him too, but asks him to please hang up. When the call ends, everyone applauds and the video goes viral. At work, they mention the news and ask Siwon if it's his voice they hear. He firmly says yes. Later, the director's grandmother meets with him and confesses everything she has kept inside for years. From the beginning, she couldn't accept her son's death. She blamed herself for not being able to prevent it. And all that bottled up hatred kept her from loving others. And the worst part was that she took it out on her grandson. Now her heart is torn apart because she realized the harm she caused that poor boy who only needed attention and love. The director hugs her and they both break down in tears, finally healing their wounds. Sometime later, things start to get better, both at work and in the lives of the main characters. We also see that Siwon and the main character's friend decided to take their relationship seriously, and he will start working as a partner at the restaurant. Time passed like this until the main character's family meets the director's grandmother. Far from what one might expect, the lady made it clear that she has no doubts that the main character is worthy of her grandson. She deeply thanks her for giving her grandson the love she was never able to give him, and tells her that, in fact, she is more than he deserves. She makes it clear she'll judge her solely on job performance. This leaves the protagonist's father satisfied, who admits that he was nervous because the lady is a woman with a strong presence. A long time later, Suhyun receives a promotion. In the middle of the congratulations, she hears one of her coworkers say that it was easy for her, that all she had to do was seduce the owner's grandson. But before she can say anything, her rival at work defends her. Although in the end, the main character shows up and defends herself, leaving the guy speechless. Later, both rivals say that they still don't like each other, but they make it clear that they admire each other. At night, the main couple attends a rock concert by one of the director's favorite bands. They also find out that the band will go on tour in the United Kingdom, thanks to the contacts of a mysterious, anonymous fan known as the Black Dragon. The director laughs and tells him that sometimes having a secret identity has its advantages, and that's how this story ends. I hope you enjoyed this summary. Thank you very much for watching the video all the way to the end. Don't forget to visit GGPickCom's page because there are some really good dramas coming this year. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any summaries. See you in the next story.
Yeah.